Tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome back to the Power Podcast. Today, I am delighted to be joined by Maia Jackman. Now, Maia Jackman, you will know the name, a legend of the Football Ferns, former captain, so many aspects to what Maia does and who she is. So a physiotherapist, part of the FIFA 2023 Beyond Greatness campaign as an ambassador. She is an MC, she is a speaker. And what I love about Maia's story is that she's been a former player who's transitioned into a media figure. Since retiring from the game, she's become a public figure in the media, speaking about her experience, including roles in punditry, commentating, and TV hosting. She's also been awarded as a member of the New Zealand Order of Merit for her services to football in 2013 in the New Year's Honours. She is a massive voice for women in sport and anti-racism, and it is an absolute pleasure to have you with us today. Maia, welcome.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
I'm looking forward to this corridor. I have got so many questions I want to ask you. The first one I think we should start with is, just to clarify, is it football or is it soccer?
Oh, I'm going to get in trouble.
Or is it both?
As a kid, I just always called it soccer because I don't know why, because we used to watch the Premier League, so that was football, but as a kid it was soccer. And then I moved into the space where I was working for Football New Zealand, and I kept saying on interviews soccer, and they're like, cut. I'm like, oh no, because it actually was New Zealand soccer for a while, and then they changed it to football. It keeps going back and forward, so at the moment it's football.
It's football. We'll call it football because we're from the UK, so it was football when I played. But since I moved to Australia before Aotearoa, and football meant something totally different. So I also got into the habit of calling it soccer. Let's stick with football. You have had a career in football. You were captain of New Zealand Football Ferns, so right up there in the peak of that sporting career. What did your sporting career teach you about leadership on and off the field, and how that's helped you transition into life post the game?
Sport teaches you so many skills, not just on the field but off the field. I realised as I got older, and I stayed in the international space for almost 20 years. So I was able to see as I got older that I could really be helpful. Not just on the pitch, but off the pitch. But for me, I was never that rah-rah leader. I was just led by example mostly, and then off the pitch, I really wanted to know what made the players around me tick, because if you know that off the field, then you can get the most of them on the field. So I just think leadership is just knowing the people around you and knowing what their strengths are, what they find difficult, and translating that both on and off the field.
Yeah, I love that. And I think so often in the leadership space, we're taught that the role model is the rah-rah type, and it's all about you as a leader, where you're so right. It's all about the team that you lead. And when you know them, the role becomes so much easier. I love that take on leadership. It must have been a huge transition, sort of, being particularly rising to captain on the national team, sport being your life, that transition then to leave that and do something after that, particularly at such an early age. I've always marveled at athletes that, retirement hits when everybody else's career is only just kicking off. And so then you've got a whole other career after that. What's it been like for you, and how have you managed that transition, particularly into the media where you're then sort of, in the spotlight, on the screen? Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's a good one. Like, as because football was not professional when I first started, and it was very ad hoc, and we didn't have very good programs, or you had to do something else. And I think this is really common in women's sport from my era, at least. And now it's getting much more into a space where you can actually you can make a living from. So I had to study. I had to do. And I sort of swung into sports science and physio, which was really cool because it all kind of made sense. I think the first time I saw a physio run onto the field, I'm like, I could do that.
Yeah, yes.
But it was way more than that. And I think as my career sort of went forward, I was one of the first players to go professional, which was in China in 2002, I think. And from that, I think it got a bit of media attention. So I kind of had to learn on the spot how to deal with being in front of a camera and not being too nervous and all that kind of stuff. And leadership on the field and off the field helps with that for sure, because you've got to talk to newspapers. Or back then there was no social media, so I was just chatting to journalists and things like that. So and I think off the back of coming home from China, there was quite a lot of interest, and so I was on this TV show and that TV show, and then that kind of transitioned into a football show where I was sort of co-hosting with a couple of blokes, and got a lot of interesting feedback from other blokes about what I was doing on a football show that was all about men, and then from there, I was just asked to do things. I had no media training, nothing. They just kind of threw you in, but I was super into it. I really loved it. I really loved talking about the sport that I love. I mean, who wouldn't want to sit on a couch and yarn about the sport that you love, and get paid for it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that you know so much about, right? So much experience in that space in terms of your knowledge of the game. I feel like unless you've played the game, you don't really have a place in talking about it, because you've no idea what it looks like really from the outside unless you've been on the inside. And I can see in that story how you kind of learned by doing. You had all the experience because you were doing it well before you were kind of appointed officially in some of those big roles. And it's so interesting to see how things have changed for the women's game. And yes, we've still got a long way to go, and women's sport as a whole. But you're a really strong voice in this space. I mean, what do you see as the biggest opportunities for women's sports now? Because I guess you and your generation have kind of paved the way for what we see now in terms of this becoming almost like a career conversation that a young girl at 13 can have at school, which never would have happened in our day because it wasn't seen as a way of making money. And now it is. But where are the opportunities right now? Because there is still a way to go, right?
Yeah, we can't sort of sport wash where we've got into and just say that's it. And I think at every point where I was trying to push with other certain teammates that were looking at what we were doing and how sustainable it wasn't, we kept saying this isn't the end, like this is just the start. And I feel like that's just the same. We're just saying the same thing. We're not finished yet. And I don't think we ever will be until we either are at equitable stage with the men's realm or we surpass that. Because a lot of, I know, women athletes from my era who have really paved the way for the people ahead of them are now saying, I told you so. I told you so.
Yeah.
And I think women's sport is such a cool product. It's very, very different from the men's space in all aspects. And there's just this really cool, the stories that you can hear from women's sport and where they come from. And I know for me, and even still, what you had to do before you got onto the pitch was out the gate, like all the things you had to get in place. And even I went back to football in 2016 and my daughter was not even one, and oh my lord, it was tough, like trying to get everything in place. By the time I got on the field I was knackered. But then you just go to the next level and you just do it. But we've got so many opportunities to from the media point of view, from sponsorship point of view, like it's such a cool space for sponsors to come into and for the media outlets to really push and do something different. And it's happening, but it's still not happening enough. I mean, you look at the Black Ferns, where was the media coverage on them? And now you see a lot of it because they didn't win.
Yes.
Like, oh, now we're reading about it. It's it's just really frustrating, but we're getting there. But it's a slow burn.
Yeah, it is. You're so right. And I think I have such respect for women that make it in the leadership space, especially women that make it in the sporting leadership space, because it seems to me like a bigger achievement because of everything you have to overcome to get there, because of the society we live in, the kind of boys' club that surrounds many of these industries. And yet opportunity, like you say. I think I remember reading a stat where female athletes are becoming, from a social media perspective, bigger brands than the clubs they play for because of the personal story, the things that they overcome, the things that they share, and how that connects to the audience in the world. And so there's such an opportunity here for those things you mentioned, like sponsorship. And for women who are in that space, what's your advice to, I'm obsessed with how can we get more women from the locker room to the boardroom post their sporting careers, because they bring so many transferable skills. And yet we know that there's still not enough of them because of the society that we live in. What's your advice to some of those women who are kind of, going through that athletics career, looking at sort of post game, post career, what I might do next? Given you've been there, done that, what's your advice?
Yeah, I think when you transition out of sport, a lot of people feel like, well, that's all I've done. I don't really have anything else to show for. I know a lot of our girls got Prime Minister scholarships and they were able to study and do bits and pieces, but it's still not a job. You're still just studying, and maybe by the end of the career, you don't have it. It's hard. You can't do both. You can't be a professional footballer, in my space, and also have a job that is sustainable as well. Not both of them at the same time. And we had to get jobs that were okay with us leaving for 6 weeks at a time, and those jobs weren't really ones that you were going to, oh, I'm going to have a career in this. They were just there to help you where you're at. But like you said, sport has so many transferable skills, like goal setting, organisation, time management, people management. There's so many things that transfer, and it's just having the confidence to be able to advocate that what you've done in your sporting world can translate into the boardroom or into the workforce in a really, really cool way, in a different way as well, like a different way of looking at things, different perspectives, and a different lens, really, that is really diverse and can be really drawn upon in the workplace.
Yeah, oh, so true. And I've often marveled at the mental toughness that athletes, particularly women athletes, bring post career into some of those roles, because the pressure, particularly at the top level where, you're in a World Cup, you're taking a potentially winning or losing penalty kick, you're in front of 40,000 fans. And that sort of stuff you can't learn on most jobs. And so those transferable skills, and I think the mental toughness that plays out, so often in sport, we talk about the physical fitness, but the mental side of things, I mean, this is something I've always been fascinated with. What's your thoughts around the role that mindset plays in achieving peak performance, whether that's on the pitch or in life?
Mindset is huge. I always say if not everyone can be a high-performing athlete, because otherwise everyone would be doing it. And the difference is the top 2% usually. Like, you can have two people that have the exact same skill set physically on the pitch, but the difference will be who's the one that can really dial in, who can focus, who can take on those pressures and those high cooker situations. I saw players that made the squad, got on the field and just absolutely melted under pressure. And yeah, it's interesting because it's one that I really thrive on that pressure, and that really drives me, and I'm not entirely sure where that comes from. But I think for me, I was as a kid, I was a girl in a boys' world, and you got a lot of stuff thrown at you, either from parents or coaches, or I was lucky I was in a really small town where everybody knew me, and I just happened to be better than the boys, and they just accepted that. But once I went out like wider into rep teams, I ended up playing under 15 and under 16 rep Northland boys, both in football and cricket. And man, the stuff that got hurled at me from players on the field or their parents who are complaining that I'm taking the place of their kid. And wow. It's like, well, but I'm better than your kid.
Yeah.
So I learned at a really young age just to take that and park it and just really focus on what I can do. And so I think it was just learning early that there's only a few things in my control that I can hold on to, and I need to just do that and just block out the noise. So yeah, I think I learned that really early on, and it afforded me to be able to push on in my footballing career and other sport as well.
Yeah. Oh, and it's such a pressure cooker place to be, and not just in sport either. I think for women, it's either it's that no-win situation, because it's often either you're not good enough to be here, or if you are good enough to be here, we see you as a threat. And that's also just as big a problem, right? And either way, you cop the flack. And so I think, therefore, to have to deal with that, I mean, there's a whole conversation about how we shouldn't, but to have to deal with that is one thing. But the resilience then that forces you to build, and having to navigate that space to succeed, where none of those boys in your team at that point would have had that same challenge to navigate. They were just there to play the game, to focus on the game and to progress. And so the baggage that we often carry with us, whilst it would be lovely not to have, then does open up those opportunities, right, for the stuff it teaches us and how we learn to move through the world, and what we have to overcome to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And resilience is that age-old saying is fall down 7 times, get up 8. And resilience, I think, is definitely learnt. And I was lucky enough, when you talk about resilience, like, what is that? How does that look, and what does it take to have that? And it's definitely having those people in your corner who know who you are. And it's a small group of people. Like, if you go too far out and listen to all the noise, is what I was talking about before, it can really pull you away from who you are. And so I always found that if I was struggling, and who can I talk to that I know knows me and can be my cheerleader, but not in a way where they're just building me up just because, but give me really, really good, like, real feedback. And that was often my parents when I was a kid, my family. And I think, I've got such gratitude towards my family and what they helped me do and be as a kid, and then just moving on through. My mum has just been my biggest cheerleader and my soft place to fall. And man, she sort of shows resilience in many other ways. So it's I saw her own resilience, and that helped me as well.
Yeah, awesome. A role model, right? Someone to learn from, and a trusted advisor, someone that's got your back. So critical. How do you stay motivated, given some of that stuff that you've had to go through, the world that we live in, the changing face of, what's been your career over the years? What are some of the tips you use to keep yourself at your best, to keep yourself going every day, to stay motivated, even when, you're in the face of some of that kind of, noise and stuff?
Yeah, motivation's an interesting word, I think, because you're not going to be motivated every day. And there were days where it's the same for work as well, like sport or work or anywhere. You're not always going to have the motivation to get up, and like getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and going to the gym and then going to work and then going to training later. Who's motivated for that every day?
True.
But it's just that consistency of doing the little things every day when motivation's not there, because you want to succeed and you want to you have your goals and you want to reach them, and every day you're not going to be motivated to reach them, but it's just like, what are the little things that I can do that'll get me up, and the people around you, and there is that sort of that want to succeed, and sometimes you're not going to, sometimes you're going to fall. And it's just knowing that motivation's not always going to be there. There's going to be some really tough times, but if you stay consistent and stay true to who you are, when that motivation is there, it's really cool. It's a really cool feeling. And the more, I think the more you can see that, the more confidence you build in yourself, and you just just having days where things just are going really well, and you can sort of look back on those when things are tough and go, I've been here before, and it doesn't stay poos. like there's a thing where good things don't last, bad things don't last, and it's just understanding that roller coaster of life, and understand that there'll be days where you're motivated and there's days that you're not, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, because I think sometimes we put pressure on ourselves to be motivated all the time, beat ourselves up when we're not, and feel that it's not normal. It's not peak performance unless we're at our best every day. I love that you talked about the ebbs and flows and staying true to you, and knowing that, yeah, you've had bad times before and you've bounced back, and the good and bad both come and go. I think that's a really nice way of looking at it. What's next for you? So what are you up to now? What's next on your agenda? What's keeping you busy for the rest of this year?
Well, keeping me busy is always my daughter. She's 10, and she's just
Nice.
like the absolute apple of my eye. She's just a cool little human, just such a cool little human. Well, not that little actually. She's gonna pass me soon. She's 5'2" already at 10.
Wow.
Um, so she's my biggest why. But in terms of where I'm at elsewhere, I just left physio after a 24-year sort of on and off probably career. Because with football, I was sort of in and out of it whilst I was
Mm,
still playing. I did a few sort of sport administration roles, but sort of stuck in physio has probably been my longest. In my last job, I was there for 10 years, and I was working with mostly sports kids at Mount Albert Grammar. So that was a cool place to be. It was really high energy and really fun, and just the kids are just so cool. And it was a really great job whilst Kai was growing up, because it was pretty much school hours.
nice.
Um, but I got to, I think, after the 2023 Women's World Cup, where it was just such an epic tournament here, the
Yeah.
biggest women's tournament in the world here in New Zealand, and I was like, I cannot believe I'm seeing this here in my own backyard, and I'm still young enough to appreciate it.
Yeah.
I just didn't think that would ever be a thing. And through that, I did lots of speaking, lots of advocating for the sport, lots of trying to get people on board and get them interested in the sport. And when that finished, I was like, that was really cool, but what do I do now? Like, I feel like I've got something more to give somewhere, but I don't know what that is. And I did get quite a few speaking roles out of that, and people coming asking me to speak about all sorts of different things.
Nice.
Um, but that's often not a full-time role either.
Yeah.
So I sort of put my feelers out, and ended up applying for a job at High Performance Sport New Zealand, which is an organisation that is government funded, and they help our sports and athletes who are reaching for podium, reaching for world class stuff, to be performing on the world stage at their best. So I was like, that would be cool to get into that
Nice.
space. So I applied, and I was lucky enough to get a role there, which I'll be starting in a couple of weeks, which is really exciting.
Fabulous. And skilled and experienced enough to get a role there as well, right?
Exactly, because if you look at the job description, I was just like, I'd already spoken to my now boss about the role previously a couple of years ago, so I kind of knew what it was. But if I'd just seen the job description, there's no way I would have applied. Which, that goes where a lot of women will look at a job and be like, oh, hell no. I can do that one thing. I mean, I can do those 9 things, but I can't do that one thing, so I'm not going to apply. Whereas men will be like, I can do that one thing, I'm going to apply.
Yeah, I'll just learn the rest.
Oh, yeah. So it's a really good sort of example of there's so many transferable skills, and you just don't know it until you put in the face of the place and you give what you think and what you've learnt and all the experience that you've had, and they go, you know what, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, so I didn't, I didn't have all the skills that were sitting on that job description, but I've got other skills that look the same, and that saying, "Jack of all trades, master of none." Jack of all trades, master of none. I recently learnt from a year 9 boy that that's not your full saying. It's because that doesn't sound good. Jack of all trades, master of none. He said the next part is better than a master of one, which means you can adapt to any situation and you've got a skill set that's really, really big and you're not only just focused on one. And I feel like that's a lot of sports people if they're trying to transition, and a lot of people with different skill sets from different parts of your life. If you're looking at leadership or going into the boardroom, there's so many things. I think, especially as an older woman, if you're looking at changing tack, which is me, I'm 50. The skills that you've built up over the years are going to be gold for something different, and to pivot, and just have to know and understand and believe that.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's really good advice. And for those listening in, particularly if you're about to apply for a role and those feelings creep in of, can I do this? I don't tick all the boxes on the position description, all the usual feelings, particularly for women that creep in, know that you've got those transferable skills. And I think sometimes it's about not discounting ourselves out of the process. So not making the decision on behalf of others. Go to the interview, put your application in. If you're not suitable for the role, somebody will find that out as part of the process. But 9 times out of 10, we underestimate ourselves and we get through that process as you've experienced, Maia. And they say, yeah, you're exactly what we're looking for. You bring so many skills to this role that we will benefit from. So I reckon that's really good advice for those listening in. Maia, where can people find you? If they're looking to book a speaker, they're looking to kind of get involved with some of the work that you're doing, where's the best place for people to find you?
Oh God, I think we spoke about this earlier that I'm not that tech savvy, but I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, but I'm you have to ask to be my friend, so I probably need to change that. It's probably an area I want to get into a little bit more. So because I've got the amazing Cassie Roma in my realm.
Nice.
She can
help you with that.
Yeah, I've got my own personal coach there. So it's something that we've spoken about doing more of. I mean, we're both on Between Two Beers Speakers Bureau.
Nice.
And so that's a place that people can go to have a look and see if I'm something of fit for them.
Yeah,
so that's the Between Two Beers podcast. I'll give them a shout out.
Yeah,
the dudes. So in terms of finding me, it's there on their website, LinkedIn, and that's about it at the moment. But it's a space that I definitely want to grow in the future.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, we will put the notes we'll put those links in the show notes so that people can find you. Thank you so much for your time today, Maia. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you, and thank you for sharing your story with us, your wisdom, and there's some great advice in there for those listening in.
No worries. It's been an absolute pleasure and it's been fun.